he got some good news for you. Hey, man, listen. Hey, everybody, gather near. The doctor's in the house, so lend him your ear. The things he can say might even make your day. He might even help your pain go away. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. I'm sure he can tell you just what to do. The doctor is in the house. Doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. The doctor is in the house. If you have a pain, call a doctor. If you have a sprain, call a doctor. Let the doctor know what you're going through. Let him tell you what's good for you, because the doctor is in the house.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ron here, and I am in the house. Thanks for listening to Dr. Ron, Unfiltered, Uncensored, episode 486. Incredible. I can't believe I've done that many episodes now on Podbean. And today we're in the third part of a series of podcasts that have to do with aging. So before we get there, I want to give a shout out to Brenda, who is taking a leave from our bocce league to have some surgery done. And I know she'll be fine. And I want to shout out there to Bob. Bob's taking a leave from our golf shop to take care of his family. So best of luck to both of you. And thank you all for listening to this podcast. This past week, we passed the 15,000 listener limit, and we want to go to 20,000. But I want to thank everybody because it happens with you. So with an attitude of gratitude, let's continue talking about health span. And the future of medicine is now. And the future is in frequencies. And I was just interviewed live on Dr. Smith's live show, which is, there's a link in the question section of this live podcast. And I'll put this link also with the explanation of the podcast when it is posted on Podbean. And there, Dr. Smith and I discuss how frequency healing can take place and the different modes of frequency healing. And you don't need a fancy Rife machine, although they're really great. But it was a good interview. I enjoyed doing it, and I appreciate Dr. Smith for inviting me on his show. So there's lots of things to do, right, if we want to live long, and we haven't even gotten to ozone or methylene blue and the rest. But centenarians have been studied and studied and studied, and there's no specific pattern they found among centenarians. But based on years of data, they found that centenarians as a whole are 37% overweight, 8% were obese, 37% were smokers, 44% reported only moderate exercise, 20% never exercised at all. And despite this population of centenarians have a 60% lower rate of heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. Interestingly, and very importantly, depression and other psychiatric illnesses are almost non-existent. Now, that's not to say we have to disregard the importance of a healthy lifestyle. And that's going to be part of what we're going to talk today about: lifestyle and sugar and the different chemicals in our environment. We have to pay attention to our lifestyle. So I just thought it was interesting, just like the study out of Acciaroli in Italy, where social relationships trumped all the smoking and obesity and exercise. So being happy and not depressed is probably one of the main secrets of living to an old age. But we want to be young at an old age, and that's why we're talking about these products, these instances. So keeping a positive attitude, ladies and gentlemen, and eating good food. Moderate exercise is also a positive if you want to live longer. Live independently as long as you can. And stay mentally active, always learning something new, and practice your faith and spirituality. So one joke that these centenarians make about how to live long, they just say, quote, avoid dying, unquote. Well, that's because they do have a sense of humor. Find your passion, live it. Practice forgiveness. I think that's really important, because the person holding a grudge knows, it really affects them more than the person they're mad at. The person they're mad at probably sometimes doesn't even know that is a problem. And let's avoid stress, huh? Let's not dwell on the negative, accentuate the positive, and let's try and be very happy people, because happy people by themselves live longer, according to one study. In fact, they quantified it as 35% longer. Another study found that happiness and contentment increased our health and longevity. Optimists live longer than pessimists. Okay, and there are nutrients, and that's for another podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could just spread the word about Dr. Ron Unfiltered, Uncensored, so we can get more listeners, because we're going to be talking about healthcare options, the real effect of drugs, the effect of big pharmaceuticals on medical care. We want to try and educate you so you can help yourself and make educated medical decisions and know that you have options. And we'll try and continue to broadcast the latest medical and complementary medical news. Okay, so that's all of my self-promotion. Okay, so what if there was one word that could be used that epitomizes the typical American diet? The Standard American Diet, SAD. That word, ladies and gentlemen, will have to be sugar. And it's on the rise. It's in most of the processed junk around us. The average American is eating now over 150 pounds of sugar in 1 year. And that accounts for 15% of adult Americans' total caloric intake from sugars. My gosh. Now you have an idea of why we have so much diabetes, so much heart disease. According to a study now out of Massachusetts General Hospital, cutting 20% of the sugar from packaged foods and 40% from beverages could prevent, now get this, 490,000 cardiovascular deaths, 750,000 cases of diabetes, and stop 2.48 million cardiovascular disease events. What do I mean by that? That's stroke, heart attacks, and cardiac arrest. And that is only cutting out 20% of the sugar. If a food contains 40 grams of sugar, simply reducing that to 32 grams could go a long way to keeping everybody healthier and to live longer. You want an anti-aging program? Cut out sugar. And it's not something you need to wait around to do. You can do it now. Just to take some simple steps to eliminate processed sugars from your diet. And as we've talked about, shop around the outer perimeter of the grocery store. Avoid the inside aisles, which are all processed foods. The perimeter typically contains natural foods like meats, eggs, vegetables, and fruit that do not contain added sugars. If you have to go down the inside aisles, it's all about making smart choices. Start reading the labels. If you want to buy some cereal, well, grab a box that is not loaded with sugar. Opt for the plain oats. Put your own fruit on the sugar. So we want to get rid of the junk food. And we talked about this for the past 2 weeks. I think I remember talking about the study that showed that ultra-processed foods have gone from 53% to 57% of our calories. But fresh food calories plunge from 32 to 27%. You want to live a long time? You don't need an ozone generator or anything else. You need to, as part of your program, get rid of sugar. And another thing that this was brought to us by the Chinese virus called COVID. And it's just, I fought this for 3 years, and of course, no one listens to me. But now there's a study in environmental science and technology that suggests that the rampant, widespread use of disinfectants through COVID could be fostering a new health crisis. According to this study, the excessive use of antimicrobial chemicals are now linked to numerous health problems, including antimicrobial resistance and even environmental harm. This study doesn't suggest that disinfecting and sanitizing is the wrong thing to do, but that it was an overhyping of the quaternary ammonium compounds. They're the volatile organic compounds that you can smell in your home, in the healthcare, education, in the workplace, in the elevators, where you cannot escape inhaling these quaternary ammonium compounds. And there are a broad class of chemicals. Hand sanitizers, disinfectant wipes, cleaning sprays, etc. And if you're overexposed to them like we were for 3 years, they can become harmful. And people forgot about using good old soap and water and vinegar. But everybody was looking for something on the label that says kills COVID-19. Well, we tried. But keeping clean does not have to be complicated or risky. Because we've known by various studies that 20 seconds of vigorous hand washing is still one of the single best ways to dislodge and kill viruses and bacteria. Never skimp on that. Never skimp on your hand washing. But we can skimp on these chemicals that are volatile, that are inhalable, and guess what? They get in through your skin. And what have we talked about? The skin is the largest organ of our body. The largest organ of our body. So it gets right into our circulation. And while we're talking about going shopping, how about the soda and juice aisle? It's really crazy because I took a look myself. It's all sorts of drinks in that aisle. And again, you look at the nutrition label and you'll discover the majority of them have nothing but sugar. There's sugar in a jug, ladies and gentlemen. And that's not all. That's not all. A number of popular beverages, guess what? Contain arsenic, contain cadmium, contain lead. You know what they are? They are heavy metals. They are toxic to our bodies. So if it's not just the sugar, now these studies are finding these heavy metals in these drinks. Now, the study didn't name specific brands, but they did note that all of the beverages tested, 60 in total, are commonly found in grocery stores. Now, sure, they weren't toxic enough to kill you from a bottle, but they were below most federal standards. But do you think drinking and imbibing these heavy metals is good in the long run, especially if you're not detoxification, you have no detox programs going on at the same time? But why even bother? Don't worry about the labels. Don't drink that junk. Again, you're getting sugar and metal poisoning. Do you really think that drinking toxic metals in any amount is good for you? You think there's a moderate dose of chemicals that you should be okay with? Okay, again, this is up to you now. This is the lifestyle changes that are in your control. Absolutely in your control. And then we have all the endocrine disruptors. They're hiding all over. You can't see them, but they're all around us. They're part of those cleaners. And they're linked to a myriad of problems that will stop us from aging, stop us from having a lot of birthdays. And those problems relate to obesity, glandular disorders, developmental issues, and now they're even saying cancer. We've talked about endocrine disruptors, and they are chemicals that disrupt the endocrine system. Some are natural, but the biggest problem today is from the man-made chemicals that can affect your hypothalamus, your pineal gland, your pituitary gland, thyroid, thymus, and on and on. And your endocrine system is technically made up of all the glands that produce hormones. The two major ones, I would say, would be your thyroid gland and your adrenal gland. Because your thyroid gland is majorly involved in metabolism. And if that starts to malfunction and you have hypothyroidism, you'll be prone to gaining weight. Your cholesterol will go high. You'll be tired. You may have some depression. And you don't want your adrenal glands to be underactive because they also help regulate your immune system. They help modulate your response to stress and blood pressure, and can also cause fatigue and loss of appetite. So these chemicals negatively, not positively, but negatively affect your endocrine system. And we're all at risk, but our kids, our children, our grandchildren, our infants and developing children are most at risk because these hormones are vital for their development. In fact, they have even studied pregnant women, and prenatal exposure to these chemicals is a very real problem. It affects the IQ, especially now that there's so much fluoride in the water. Babies are born with a lower IQ by age 7. They're born, and then by age 7, their IQ tested lower than normal. So the more toxic it is, it just stands to reason that it's going to have a greater effect. But research is indicating that small amounts of exposure of these chemicals can have a major impact. So what do we want to avoid? Well, BPA for number one. It's a chemical that's used in plastic. We want to avoid dioxin. That's a major endocrine disruptor. It's hard to avoid completely, though, because the dioxins accumulate in the food chain, and typically in animal products. So maybe once in a while it might be a good idea to have a plant-based meal. And the phthalates, they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. The most common toxin in cosmetic products. They make the cosmetics softer and they stick longer, but they're toxic to your health. They can cause a loss of a pregnancy. So you want to look for a phthalate-free cosmetic, PHTHALATE, phthalate-free. And I'm going to let you just search for the endocrine disruptors, the perchlorates, the fire retardants. Again, the fire retardants like that were used in babies' night clothes and on furniture have been associated with lowering IQ along with other neurotoxic effects. And now we want to be careful of arsenic. We know now it's in some drinks, although I can't name them, but it said of 60 tested, they all had some arsenic. But it's a heavy metal. It's a heavy metal. So they say that water and rice are the two most likely places to find this metal. So, the advice to filter your water is really well taken with a good water filter. And mercury is another heavy metal. We've talked about this for 20 years, how it can accumulate in your brain. There's a lot of it in certain seafood, especially farm raised. So wild caught salmon is your best choice, ladies and gentlemen. And these non-stick chemicals, got to avoid them. We've got to try and get these out of your life. We've got to try and eat cleaner, test and filter our water, be extra cautious about our beauty and skincare products. Endocrine disruptors. So we want to live a long life. We got to get rid of some of this toxic exposure, the toxic ingredients that even in laundry detergents. And we're all at risk. And so are our pets, dogs and cats, because they come in contact with the bedding that has been washed, right? The blankets, people's clothes. Some people say the unexplained allergies in your pets could come from the laundry products that you're using. And we talked last week about fragrance, the synthetic fragrance. Very common now in laundry products. And who would ever think about benzene and formaldehyde? I mean, in your laundry. So I guess they're getting ready for you to be embalmed. Incredible. But this formaldehyde can hide in fragrance. It can be added in small amounts to fragrance formulas, and it does not have to be disclosed. Or sometimes it's just produced when certain fragrant chemicals react with ozone. And we talked about optical brighteners. These are all in detergents. That's why we have to shop more naturally. Get rid of these artificial dyes. Go for a plant-based detergent. Zero fragrance or naturally scented laundry detergents. Look for labels that say it's safe for humans and the environment. So, sure, I talk about and I practice using frequencies, and I use melatonin, like we've talked about, as an anti-aging product. But I also use glycine every day because glycine is being replaced by Roundup. And glycine displaces the glyphosate. Almost sounds the same, right? Glyphosate is Roundup, so glyphosate displaces glycine. Glycine is an amino acid that has been shown to extend the lifespan in animals and helps to slow down chronic diseases, so therefore also increases our health span. So we want our health span to increase with our lifespan. Glycine has anti-cancer effects, reduces insulin, alleviates neuroinflammation, and also can protect against depression. Need about 10 grams a day. 10 grams a day. But look, glycine has been touted to be the antidote for Roundup. So why don't we just think about that and think about adding glycine as a sweetener to our coffee or tea or whatever for its anti-aging benefits. And it will probably make you look younger because a lot of studies show it increases collagen synthesis. That's to get rid of the wrinkles. So a lot of studies were done in animals, I do admit that. But glycine is inexpensive and easy to use and can replace sugar and artificial sweeteners. Some human trials confirm what the animal models suggested. That is that glycine is protective against a range of chronic diseases. 60 people with metabolic syndrome, that's obesity, hypertension, diabetes, who took 15 grams of glycine a day for 3 months had reduced stress and improved blood pressure. It helps with our mitochondria. What have we talked about? Our mitochondria are our engines of our cells. And probably as a great indicator of how long we're going to live if we keep our mitochondria healthy. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. A link to a Roku television interview that I did with Dr. Smith 2 weeks ago. And it's not only what we do, what supplements we take. We have to have an attitude of gratitude, try and be happy, try and be optimistic, Don't watch television 24 hours a day. Don't watch the news 24 hours a day. And avoid the chemicals in our environment and avoid sugar. Remember what just a 20% decrease in sugar does for us. So we'll talk about supplements as in the different parts of anti-aging. But before we start taking supplements, we have to take charge of our own life. We have to avoid putting junk into our system. Our skin being the largest organ, stuff gets right in the skin, through our skin, into our blood vessels without the benefit of going through our stomach and then our liver, then getting into the circulation. Just want to remind you, you can search for the podcasts I've done on sunscreens, but that's the dark side of the sun, the sunscreens. Sunscreens in some books have been called a biohazard. A biohazard. And there's one book called Sunscreens, a biohazard treated as hazardous waste. Treated as hazardous waste. And research has not validated the claim that the sun is not safe. And there's a whole misinformation about how the sun is not safe and causes melanoma. Sunscreen use actually promotes skin cancer because of all the oils and the oxybenzones that used to be in there. And the sunscreens can mimic hormones. They are endocrine disruptors. And it's been advised that consumers avoid products that have an SPF rating or foods or clothing that contain titanium dioxide. It gets into our bodies. It's not good for us. So we've gone the wrong direction in sunscreens, and there are options. We'll talk about that. So next week, I'll try and remember to talk about sunscreens and methylene blue. And when we talk about methylene blue, I'm not talking about the methylene blue you get in a fish store, a tropical fish store that has arsenic in it. We'll be talking about pharmaceutical grade methylene blue. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dr. Ron, host of Dr. Ron Unfiltered, Uncensored, wishing Brenda good luck with her surgery and not forgetting all the other great listeners we have. As I said, we passed 15,000 this week, and I owe it all to you. So thank you so much and have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Hey everybody, Dr. Ron's finished for today. I hope you got some good wisdom for what the man had to say. If it's all about good health, he's the man you got to see. He has a lot more answers for you. So tune in next week when the doctor is in the house. Or when the doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. I'm sure he can tell you just what to do. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. So if you have a pain, call the doctor. If you have a strain, call the doctor. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. See you next week.